Every winter, medieval villages seemed as if visited by the Grim Reaper, silent and desolate. Almost every 4 families would have one that never saw spring again. Not because of distant travels, but because they were buried beneath the snow. During that little ice age, people weren't simply devoured by the cold, but rather, they remained awake, feeling their bodies gradually breaking down, yet powerless to stop it. Before diving into tonight's story, a quick reminder. If you enjoy this spine-chilling yet addictive narrative, don't forget to subscribe or you'll easily miss out. Speaking of which, I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? In bed, on the road, or in a quiet room? Last time, someone commented they were listening with headphones in Finland at -10 degrees at night. That atmosphere was just like the story we're about to tell. All right, wrap yourself in a blanket, dim the lights. We're stepping into that winter filled with howling winds, hunger, and despair. You wake up, not because of the cold, but because of something more insidious. The sound of water. Drip, drip, drip. This sound is unusually clear in the dark silence of your single-room thatched hut, like a tireless woodpecker drilling into your skull. It's not the familiar, comforting crackle of the hearth fire, nor the roar of the gale outside. This is a sound of betrayal. It's the illusion of a brief winter truce, the warning of what the elders call the thief's thaw. Your eyes open in the darkness, but you see nothing. The darkness here is so pure, so heavy, as if it's a tangible substance, a black velvet soaked in the smell of smoke, livestock breath, dampness, and the sour odor of unwashed bodies. You lie on the sleeping platform, one side pressed against your brother Jorn's broad back. He sleeps like a rock, his breathing deep and steady. On the other side, your 6-year-old sister Lena lets out a faint cough, sounding especially fragile in the damp air, like the chirp of a lost little bird. Your mother, Ilsa, has already risen silently. You don't see her, but you feel the faint draft from her movement. Hear the almost imperceptible rustle of her bare feet on the packed earth floor. She's heading toward the source of the sound. Drip, drip. The sound stops. What follows is a suppressed gasp of horror. This sound tightens your heart more than any alarm bell. Gunnar. Your mother's voice rises in the darkness, with a tension you've only heard in the most dire moments. Get up quickly. The thatch is leaking. Water's dripping on the grain. Your father, Gunnar, rises from the other end of the sleeping platform without hesitation or complaint. His tall figure is just a deeper shadow in the dark. He doesn't light the precious tallow candle, doesn't even stoke the fire. In moments like this, every action must be guided by memory and touch. Wasting light is wasting time, and wasting time invites famine into the home. You sit up immediately, the icy air wrapping around your back like a wet snake, clad only in your linen undergarment. Your heavy wool tunic is being used as an extra blanket over Lena, who's been battling weakness in her lungs all winter. Ignoring the cold, you slide off the platform, your feet hitting the bone-chilling ground, feeling like stepping on shattered glass. Alan. Your father's voice is low and strong, full of unquestionable authority. Go get the oilcloth. Quick. You grope your way through the narrow space, carefully avoiding the clucking chickens in the corner. The oilcloth, a heavy canvas repeatedly coated with linseed oil and pine resin, is one of your family's most valuable possessions. It's waterproof, the only tool for protecting the harvest during rainy autumns and unpredictable springs. In winter, it's carefully rolled up and stored on the rafters to prevent rat damage. Your fingers fumble along the rough wooden beam, finally touching the smooth, cold feel of the oilcloth. You struggle to pull it down, its weight nearly making you stumble. Meanwhile, you hear Yorn grumbling as he wakes, then the dragging and grunting sounds as your father moves the heavy sacks. When you drag the oilcloth to the center of the room, your father has already assessed the damage by the faint red glow from the fire's embers. A thin stream of water is dripping from a seam in the roof beam, right onto your family's winter hope. 3 sacks of barley and 1 of rye. The top sack of barley's burlap is soaked in a large patch, darkened. Damn warm spell, Yorn mutters beside you, his voice full of youthful anger. This cursed weather is toying with us. He's right. This midwinter thaw is more dangerous than the harshest freeze. It melts the snow, seeping into every crevice of the thatched roof, then refreezes at night, widening tiny cracks. It threatens stored food with the deadly risk of mold and rot. Mold, in winter, is a quieter, deadlier killer than wolf packs. No nonsense. Your father snaps, but his tone is more urgent than reproachful. Move this sack away. Ilsa, check the grains. You and Yorn grab the ends of the soaked sack. It's unnaturally heavy, like a water-soaked boulder. You both strain with all your might, muscles screaming in the cold, to drag it off the other grains. Your father quickly covers the remaining sacks with the oilcloth, then kneels beside the damaged barley sack with your mother. Your mother, Ilsa, unties the sack's mouth and plunges her hand into the cold grains. Her fingers are the family's most sensitive tool, able to detect the slightest texture change. She scoops up a handful, brings it to her face, and judges by smell in the near-total darkness. The whole hut is silent, except for Lena's suppressed coughs and the hiss of the last embers in the fire. You're all waiting for her verdict. Just the surface, she finally says, her voice trembling with relief. The inside is still dry, but we must spread it out to dry immediately, or it'll start molding before dawn. Where to dry it? Yorn asks, his question laced with despair. There's not an inch of dry space in the hut. The floor is damp packed earth, the air full of moisture. Near the fire, your father decides firmly. Alan, restart the fire. Use those birch logs. They burn hot. Yorn, bring your sleeping blanket and spread it on the ground. It's a tough decision. Rekindling the fire means using precious firewood. Using the blanket means Yorn will be colder for the second sleep. But in the harsh arithmetic of survival, a sack of barley is worth far more than a few logs and a night's comfort. You kneel by the stone hearth, carefully blowing on the embers, holding dry tinder, a bit of flax fiber and dry moss, close. Sparks ignite and you blow gently, steadily, until a small flame licks the tinder. Then you add small birch twigs, finally the thicker birch logs your father specified. The flames rise, casting huge dancing shadows on the hut walls, illuminating your family's faces for the first time. You see the deeper furrows on your father's face, anxiety etched on his forehead. You see your mother's eyes, resolute yet weary. You see Yorn's jaw clenched, reluctantly spreading his wool blanket on the ground. Lena sits up on the platform, watching everything with her disproportionately large eyes in fear, her small body shaking with each cough. Together, you carefully pour the barley onto the blanket, forming a thin layer. Your father rakes the grains with his hands to allow warm air to circulate. This is a race against time, a battle to drive out the deadly moisture with the fire's heat before invisible mold spores take root. I'll go up and check, your father says, heading to the crude ladder leading to the low attic. It's too dark, Gunnar, your mother says worriedly. And slippery. Mold is more dangerous than darkness, he replies, unyielding. You watch him disappear into the attic shadows, hearing only the creaks of thatch and beams overhead as he moves. The remaining 4 of you sit around the fire, silently guarding the drying grains. This isn't just barley. It's February's bread, March's thin porridge, the tangible form of whether you'll make it to spring. You extend your hand, feeling the fire's warmth. This warmth is no longer pure comfort. It's now a weapon, a tool against decay. You realize that medieval winters have not one enemy, but many faces. Freezing, hunger, disease, and betrayals like tonight's, disguised as false warmth. After a long while, your father comes down from the attic, covered in dust and thatch fragments. I plugged it temporarily with some dry hay, but it won't hold until the next freeze. At dawn, I'll need new thatch and willow withes. That means going to the marsh, where willows provide flexible branches even in winter. It means facing the mud and dangers from the thaw. Another unplanned, calorie-consuming task added to the already overwhelming survival list. Sleep, your father says to you. Take turns watching the fire and grains. I'll go first. You yawn, and your mother return to the sleeping platform. Without Yearn's blanket, you huddle closer, trying to draw a bit of warmth from each other. Lena's coughs seem more frequent, the damp air irritating her fragile lungs. Your mother holds her tight, humming an ancient lullaby in her ear, the melody full of sorrow and resilience. You close your eyes, but sleep evades you. You listen to your father raking the grains, the crackle of the fire, Lena's labored breaths. You suddenly grasp a cruel truth. In winter, sleep isn't rest, but a resource to be guarded and vigilant over. Like food and firewood, your survival depends not just on daytime labor, but on conquering the stealthy crises of long, dark nights. The watch bell wakes you from shallow, uneasy sleep. It's the midnight bell from the village chapel, marking the end of first sleep and the start of the watch period. For modern people, waking at midnight is an annoyance. For your medieval ancestors, it's a normal interval for wakefulness, work, and preparation. Your father gently shakes you. Your shift, Alan. Keep the fire steady. Turn the grains every quarter hour. You nod, slide off the platform. The air in the hut is colder than before, as the door was opened when your father stepped out briefly. He returns with wet, cold mud on his boots. The fog is thick, he whispers. The ground is slippery like oiled pigskin. You take over the watch, sitting on a low stool by the fire. Your father lies in your spot, falling asleep almost immediately. His body is like an efficient machine, knowing how to seize every rest opportunity. You gaze at the flickering grains in the firelight. They look drier, but you dare not let your guard down. With a whittled stick, you gently, methodically turn them, mimicking your father's motions. This monotonous task keeps you alert. Outside, the world is silent. The thick fog swallows all sounds, creating a sense of isolation. You know that in other huts across the village, families are performing their own watch rituals. Women spinning yarn, men repairing tools or braiding ropes, elders whispering ancient tales to children. This is a time for darkness and quiet labor, an unseen world sustaining the community. Lena starts coughing again, more violently this time. Your mother wakes without complaint, sitting up habitually. She pours a dark, herbal-scented liquid from a small clay jar syrup she brewed from dried thyme and honey. She feeds Lena a spoonful, then places a cloth dampened with warm water on her forehead. This damned dampness, she whispers to you, more to herself. It's no good for her at all. You look at your sister's pale little face flickering in the firelight, a wave of helplessness washing over you. In winter, A simple lung infection could claim a child's life. All you can do is rely on passed-down herbal knowledge and prayer. To dispel the chill in your heart, you begin your watch task. You pick up an unfinished wood carving and your knife from the corner. It's a bird, perhaps a raven, you're making for the upcoming spring equinox. Your fingers are stiff in the cold, but soon you find rhythm in the repetitive whittling. Your mind focuses on the point where blade meets wood, each cut calculated for maximum effect with minimal effort. This isn't just passing time. In winter, keeping hands and mind busy is a strategy against despair. Idleness breeds fear, while purposeful work, no matter how small, brings a sense of control. Time passes in silence. You turn the grains, whittle the wood, listen to your family's breaths. You feel a strange connection. You and your family like a small group trapped in amber, together resisting a hostile world. Your breaths condense into white mist, your body heat creating a fragile island of warmth. When the bell for second sleep finally rings, you feel relief. You wake Yorn to take your shift, then curl back into the brief warmth on the platform. As you sink into sleep again, you dream of spring, of dry, warm sunlight, of golden, healthy waves of wheat. It's such a strong longing that it becomes a force in itself, a reason to wake for the next cold morning. Dawn arrives, bringing a gray-white world shrouded in thick fog. The hut is filled with a complex aroma. Birch smoke, dusty drying grains, and the herbal scent near Lena's sickbed. Breakfast is thin oatmeal porridge, even thinner than usual. Every oat grain is calculated. Your father inspects the dried barley, nodding satisfied. "It's dry enough," he announces. "Bag it back up. We have much to do today." When you step out of the hut, the damp chill immediately pierces your wool tunic. The ground is a mix of mud and half-melted ice, making walking treacherous and difficult. The village looks like a ghostly silhouette, thatched roofs looming in the fog, chimney smoke blending with the mist. You see other villagers emerging, their movements slow and cautious. No one speaks loudly. Energy is precious, not to be wasted on unnecessary words. But you communicate through glances and nods, a silent language of shared hardship and determination. The village reeve Oswald, a burly man with a grizzled beard, stands gravely by the central well. Several men gather around him, murmuring. Your father signals you and Yorn to follow. "The bridge," Oswald says succinctly as you approach. "Last night's thaw and this morning's refreeze broke it." Your heart sinks. That wooden bridge over the small river between the village and the mill is the village's lifeline. Without it, you can't transport grain to the mill for flour. Without it, you can't access the forest on the other side with the best willows and moose game. Without it, you're trapped. "How bad?" your father asks. "One main support beam snapped," Oswald replies. "The whole structure is tilted. Crossing now is suicide. We need to fix it before the next blizzard, or we're in real trouble. This is a community-wide crisis, far beyond your leaking roof." Oswald begins assigning tasks, his voice carrying years of authority. "Gunnar, you're the best carpenter. You lead the repair. Yorn, you're the strongest. Organize men to haul spare timber. Alan," he turns to you, "you have sharp eyes and quick feet. Check the ice upstream and downstream. We need to know if the ice is stable for working on." You accept the task immediately. It's an important duty, full of responsibility. You head upstream along the frozen riverbank, testing the ground carefully with each step. The fog limits visibility. You rely on sounds and foot feel. The river roars muffled under the ice, with cracks revealing turbulent, dark water below in places. It takes nearly an hour to survey upstream and downstream thoroughly. The ice is highly unstable, especially near the broken bridge. You find several huge cracks, like black lightning across the white ice. You return with this bad news to the bridge. By now, most able-bodied men have gathered there. They stand before the broken bridge, silently assessing the challenge. The bridge looks like a wounded giant, leaning helplessly, the snapped beam like a broken bone piercing the cold air. You report to your father and Oswald. "The ice under the bridge is too thin," you say. "We can't stand people on it." Your father strokes his weather-beaten beard, brow furrowed. "That means working from the shore. It'll be 10 times slower, 10 times more dangerous." But there's no choice. Under Oswald's command, the repair begins. It's an arduous task. Men secure the bridge with thick ropes to prevent further collapse. Jörn leads a team dragging a massive, roughly hewn oak beam from the village's spare timber pile to the river. The beam leaves a deep furrow in the muddy snow like a prehistoric beast's corpse. Your job is to pass tools and ropes, climbing up and down the steep, slippery bank. Your hands soon go numb and ache, each breath like inhaling icy blades. But you don't stop because you see your father, that stoic, rock-solid man, taking the greatest risk. They lower him on ropes, suspended in midair to inspect the damage underneath. He moves like a spider on the slick beams, using his adze to clear splintered wood. The icy river churns just feet below. If the ropes snap or he slips, he's swept into the freezing water, certain death. The village's fate seems to hang on those worn ropes and your father's skill. Women and children stand at a distance, watching tensely, even Lena bundled in a blanket by your mother. Their presence is silent support, a heavy reminder. Failure costs everyone's hunger. Time ticks by. The sun tries to pierce the fog but only casts a pale, milky light in the sky. Cold, damp, and exhaustion begin eroding everyone. Then disaster strikes. As men try to maneuver the new support beam into place, a lever slips. The heavy oak beam lurches, slamming into the bridge. The heavy oak beam lurches, slamming into the bridge. Jörn, at the front pushing, slips to dodge it, losing balance, tumbling toward the icy river. A terrified scream rises from the watching women. Your heart stops, your closest. Without thinking, your body reacts. You drop your rope, lunge forward, sliding on the slick mud, grabbing the edge of Jörn's heavy leather jerkin just as his body fully falls. The immense pull nearly yanks your arm from its socket. Your boots desperately seek grip in the cold mud. Jörn's weight drags you toward the edge. You see half his body dangling, face full of shock and fear. "Hold him!" Your father yells from below. Another man, the village blacksmith, dives in, grabbing your waist. Then a third, a fourth. They form a human chain, pulling you both back from death's brink. Jörn collapses on the bank, gasping, face pale as snow. You kneel beside him, your body shaking uncontrollably. Not from cold, but adrenaline aftermath. Jörn looks up at you. His eyes hold no gratitude, that's not his nature. But there's something new, a complex, reluctant acknowledgement. He just nods, almost imperceptibly, but you know an invisible, icy barrier between brothers has cracked, like the river ice. No one celebrates the narrow escape. The crisis isn't over. Oswald just walks over, pats your shoulders. "Get up," he says in his gravelly voice. "The bridge is still waiting." This simple phrase is more effective than any inspiring speech. It reminds you that individual life and death matter, but community survival overrides all. You stand again, rejoin the others, continuing the fight against the stubborn, damaged bridge. This time they're more cautious. Your father directs from below, his voice clear over the river's roar. The men work as a coordinated organism, pitting muscle, ropes, and wits against gravity and cold. Finally, before dusk falls and light dims, the new support beam is secured. The bridge still tilts, looks precarious, but it's stable. The critical repair is done. Exhausted men trudge back to the village. No words, just heavy breaths and clinking tools. This isn't a victory worth cheering. It's a Pyrrhic win. You've bought time, but winter isn't over, could strike again any time. Back home, your mother has prepared supper. A steaming pot of thick soup from your last bit of salted fish and dried peas. It's the most wonderful smell you've ever known. Lena's cough seems better. She's by the fire, playing with the wooden bird you carved that morning. The family sits around the fire, eating silently. Your father checks your shoulder, strained by Yurn's weight, burning with pain. Your mother applies mashed comfort leaves, the coolness easing it slightly. Yurn speaks to you first at supper. Your hand was quick, he says, eyes on his soup bowl. Your foot was slippery, you reply. A faint smile flickers across his lips, then vanishes. But it's enough. After eating, your father makes an unusual decision. Tonight we burn an oak log, he says. Oak is the best firewood, longest burning, hottest. Your family has saved it for the coldest nights. Tonight isn't the coldest, but it's the most exhausting. Your father knows morale and bodily warmth are equally vital. As the massive oak burns in the hearth, the whole hut fills with unprecedented warmth and light. It's a deep, reassuring warmth, seeming to dispel the chill in your bones. For the first time, the family sits together without huddling or shivering. In this moment, in this small hut besieged by wind and snow, after tests of leaks, illness, and near death, you're not just a struggling survival unit, you're a family. You watch the dancing shadows in the flames, listen to the low crackle of burning oak. You know tomorrow brings new challenges. Your father's thatch needs mending, the bridge reinforcing, and food stores dwindle daily. But tonight you've won. You've fought the thief's thaw, repaired the broken lifeline, and perhaps most importantly, grown closer as a family, a community. When the first sleep bell rings again, you lie on the platform, feeling the oak's lasting warmth. You listen to Lena's steady breaths, knowing she'll sleep more soundly tonight. You close your eyes, not dreaming of spring. You dream of the bridge, standing firm, linking this shore to the other, despair to hope. As long as the bridge holds, as long as you're together, you'll find the path to the next season. The repair of the bridge turned into a prolonged war against time, fatigue, and the limits of your own muscles. Every day, you labored beside that cold river named the Blackwater, until the sun sank weakly behind the thick fog, the sky shifting from gray to deep purple. Your world shrank to a few things: the weight of the axe, the dull thud of the adze carving through damp oak, the rough feel of ropes in your frozen hands, and your father Gunnar's terse, unquestionable commands. Lower it a bit more with the wedge. Pull tight. Don't let it sway. Alan, check the knot over there. You and Yorn, along with the village's other 6 strongest men, became extensions of your father's will. He was like a commander, and you his soldiers, the enemy being the chaos and isolation represented by the damaged bridge. Gunnar spoke little, but with his eyes and a single gesture, he could convey complex intentions. He had a gift for communing with wood, as if he could hear the groan of its fibers, foresee where it would crack, where it could bear the greatest stress. However, The work was excruciatingly slow. Without the support of the ice, you had to rely on complex systems of ropes and levers, inching the heavy timbers into place from the steep riverbank. Every success was accompanied by multiple failures and dangerous slips. The men's curses and gasps mingled with the crashes of wood against stone, forming a monotonous, despairing symphony along the Blackwater. Worse still, a new anxiety spread through the village like a plague. The mill. The mill, that stone building powered by a water wheel, capable of turning hard grains into life-sustaining flour, sat on the opposite bank, less than half a mile from the broken bridge. Now it was like a mirage, visible yet unreachable. At first, the villagers held on to hope. But as the bridge repair dragged on, hope turned to frustration. Every household's grain stores were dwindling, but more importantly, flour reserves were running out. Without flour, there was no bread. Without bread, only the monotonous, hard-to-swallow boiled grains or thin porridge forever. Bread was more than food. It was a symbol, a mark of civilization, the line separating man from beast. Eating coarse but solid bread made you feel like a farmer. Swallowing mushy gruel day after day made you feel more like a pig at the trough. The panic was silent, but you could feel it. In the women's low voices as they queued for water, their glances more frequent. In the men's evening gatherings outside Reeve Oswald's door, their talk always circling back to the same question. The bridge, when will it be fixed? Your family's situation was slightly better, thanks to your mother Ilse's careful rationing. You still had a small sack of rye flour, but she had begun mixing boiled barley into the bread, making it heavier, coarser, harder to eat. Each chew was a reminder of the broken bridge's existence. We can't go on like this forever, Jorn exploded one evening, gnawing on a piece of bread hard enough to serve as a stone. We should risk crossing the river, find a thicker patch of ice, and fall into the icy water, become dinner for the fish? Your father replied without looking up, carefully honing his axe blade on a whetstone. A foolish dead man is no good to anyone. So we just wait here to starve? Jorn shot back. We won't starve. Your mother interjected calmly, her voice carrying the power to still storms. We'll ration, we'll endure, and we'll fix the bridge. But you knew Jorn's concerns weren't baseless. People in the village were starting to fall ill. Not Lena's fragile lung ailment, but a more insidious weakness from malnutrition. Faces turned sallow, movements slowed. Winter was slowly, systematically draining the life from the village. It was amid this growing tension that you first noticed the wrong smoke. As one of the village's youngest laborers, besides working at the bridge, you had an extra duty, patrolling the village at dusk to ensure every household's fire precautions were in place. This was Oswald's rule. An accidental fire in winter was devastating. That evening, as you walked back from the village's west end, a strange smell hit your nose. It wasn't the clean, warm, woody aroma of dry oak or birch burning, but a sharp, acrid scent laced with obvious dampness. You looked up, and in the twilight, saw thick, dirty yellowish-gray smoke billowing from the chimney of old Finn's hut at the village edge. Your heart sank. You immediately understood what it meant. In Oak Haven, smoke was a language. Every villager, from child to elder, was taught to read smoke. Pale blue, almost invisible smoke meant fine, thoroughly dry hardwood, a sign of prosperity and prudence. White, thick smoke, usually from birch or pine, burned fast and hot, suitable for daytime. But the yellowish-gray, filthy smoke before you had only one source: burning unseasoned green wood, especially softwoods like alder or willow. Burning green wood in Oak Haven wasn't just foolish. It was a sin. Behind it lay a fundamental institution for the village's survival, the firewood law, strictly enforced by Reeve Oswald. Each household's allotment of dry firewood in autumn was rationed, to be conserved through the entire winter. Burning green would produce copious soot and creosote, which clung to chimney interiors, highly prone to causing fires. More importantly, it wasted heat. Most of the energy in green went to evaporating its own moisture, not providing warmth. In a world where every calorie counted, such waste was a betrayal of the entire community. Oswald had established an informal smoke watch system. Every villager was responsible for monitoring neighbors' chimneys, not for prying into privacy, but for collective safety. Spotting wrong smoke required reporting it. You stood there, torn inside. The Finn family was one of the poorest in the village. Old Finn had broken his leg last year and remained bedridden. His two sons, Ivar and Sig, were taciturn young men crushed by life's burdens. You knew they were struggling. Perhaps their dry wood had run out. Perhaps they had no choice. But you also knew the rules. Your father Gunnar, one of the most respected men in the village, hated rule breakers above all. He often said, "Rules are the wall the weak use against the strong, and the whole village uses against winter. Remove one brick, and the whole wall collapses." You hesitated for a moment, then headed home. When you told your father, he was weaving a new fishing net, his fingers deft as a weaver's. He stopped at your words, brow furrowed. "You're sure it was alder smoke?" he asked. "Yes," you replied. "I could smell it, bitter and sour." Gunnar was silent for a long time, then sighed deeply. "Oswald must know," he said without hesitation. "But their family." You tried to argue. "I know their situation," your father interrupted. "But rules are rules. If Finns can burn green wood today, tomorrow Holgars can burn rotten wood to save effort. The day after Einars can set their house alight for fun. We can't open that door." He stood, donning his heavy leather jerkin. "Come with me." You followed him into the cold night. You didn't go straight to Oswald, but first to blacksmith Thorin's, then to old Edda's, the village's eldest woman. Your father was assembling the Elder Council, an informal decision-making group of the Reeve, the best craftsmen, and the wisest elders. When your group of 5, Gunnar, Thorin, Edda, Oswald, and you as witness, approached Finn's hut, you felt like an informer and executioner. The yellowish-gray smoke still rose into the night sky, like a dirty finger pointing to guilt. Oswald led, his burly figure imposing in the dark. He didn't knock but pushed open the door, woven from willow and covered with a tattered hide. A stench of illness, poverty, and that acrid smoke hit you. The hut was smaller and darker than yours. The only light came from a crude earthen hearth, where a few damp alder logs smoldered with thick smoke, barely any flame. Old Finn lay on a straw pile in the corner, moaning in pain. His 2 sons, Ivar and Sig, huddled by the fire, their faces a mix of fear and defiance upon seeing you. "What are you burning, Ivar?" Oswald's voice was low and dangerous, like distant thunder. "Wood," Ivar replied stubbornly. He was a few years older than you but scrawny, with a waxy yellow from malnutrition. "Don't take me for a fool." Oswald stepped forward, kicking a log by the hearth with his massive boot. "This is green alder. Where's your dry wood?" "Used up," Sig muttered, head buried in his chest. "Used up." Oswald's voice rose an octave. "It's only February. No household's dry wood is used up. Did you eat it or sell it to the forest sprites?" We had to keep father warm," Ivar mustered courage, pointing to the elder in the corner. His bones ached terribly in the cold. Old Etta, the wrinkled woman with unusually bright eyes, stepped forward. She ignored the young men and went straight to old Finn, placing her withered hand on his forehead. "He's feverish," she announced, "and his cough has blood in it. This isn't ordinary chill." Your father Gunnar and blacksmith Thorin inspected the rest of the hut. Thorin kicked aside a pile of dirty burlap, revealing a small stash of dry oak beneath. "They have dry wood," Thorin boomed. "They just couldn't bear to burn it." This discovery tensed the atmosphere further. Ivar and Sig's faces flushed red. "That's for emergencies," Ivar shouted. In case father gets worse." "This is the emergency," Oswald roared, spittle flying in the firelight. "Your actions endanger the whole village. What if your chimney catches fire and ignites the neighbors? If everyone acts selfishly like you, none of us will survive this winter." "We just wanted to save our father," Sig cried out, voice breaking. "Saving one by endangering all isn't redemption. It's a crime," Oswald retorted mercilessly. "You stood at the door, watching, a icy chill in your heart. You saw how survival's pressures twisted people. The Finn brothers' motives might stem from love, but their actions from fear and selfishness." Oswald's anger, seemingly ruthless, arose from deep concern for the community's existence. Here, there were no simple rights or wrongs, only harsh realities. "Enough," your father Gunnar spoke, his voice quiet but silencing all. He walked to the hearth, picked up a smoldering green alder log, and tossed it outside. "Bring out your dry wood. Tonight, keep your father warm first. At sunrise tomorrow, under the council oak in the village center, we'll hold a village assembly. This matter needs everyone's judgment." His words were final. Oswald, though still stern-faced, nodded. Under Gunnar's calm, authoritative gaze, the Finn brothers reluctantly placed their hidden dry oak into the hearth. As clean, warm flames rose, the hut's atmosphere eased somewhat. Old Etta produced a leather pouch of dried herbs, instructing your mother Ilsa to brew them in water and bring it for old Finn. You left in silence. You knew the matter was far from over. Tomorrow, before the whole village, the Finn brothers would face judgment for their actions. And the outcome would not only decide their family's fate but test Oak Haven's fragile community. In facing survival crises, choose harsh law or human mercy. The next day, the sky was overcast, as if oppressed by the impending judgment. Villagers gathered under the massive, bare oak in the village center. This tree was older than any building, its trunk so thick 5 people were needed to encircle it, twisted branches like a giant's arms reaching into the gray sky. Since ancient times, it had been Oak Haven's courtroom, assembly hall, and sanctuary. Everyone was present except the bedridden old Finn and a few too ill. Faces showed no curiosity, only solemnity and anxiety. They wore their thickest, warmest clothes, breaths forming white clouds, like ghosts in an ancient ritual. Ivar and Sig stood under the oak, heads bowed, like lambs awaiting slaughter. Reeve Oswald faced them, backed by your father Gunnar, blacksmith Thorin, and old Etta. Oswald cleared his throat, his voice carrying far in the cold air. "We gather today to judge a crime," he began, each word like a stone. "Ivar Finn and Sig Finn are accused of violating the firewood law, burning green wood, putting the whole village at risk of fire, and wasting precious heat when we all save for survival." He turned to the brothers. "Do you plead guilty?" Ivar raised his head, lips trembling. We plead guilty, but it was for our father. Your motives will be discussed later," Oswald said coldly. Now, we hear testimony. Alan Gunnarsson, step forward. You felt all eyes on you. You stepped up, heart pounding fiercely. Tell everyone what you saw and smelled last night, Oswald commanded. You took a deep breath, describing the yellowish-gray smoke and acrid smell in as steady a voice as possible. You added no personal judgment, just facts. But each word felt like throwing stones at the Finn brothers. After you, Oswald had Gunnar and Thorin describe their findings in the hut, the hidden dry oak. When villagers heard they had dry wood but refused to use it, a suppressed, angry murmur rose from the crowd. They're hoarding, a man shouted. They want us all to freeze while keeping the best for themselves. It's selfish, a woman screamed. It's betrayal. The crowd grew agitated. In times of acute food and fuel shortage, hoarding ignited deepest fears and angers. Silence, Oswald bellowed, the murmurs subsiding. Now time for judgment. By our ancestors' law, crimes endangering the community warrant harshest punishment. Exile. Lighter. Confiscate all their firewood and fine them double chopping duty for the next month. At Exile, Ivar and Sig paled. Exile in winter was a death sentence. Even confiscation was nearly the same. Now, villagers, who has words? Oswald asked. This was Oak Haven's tradition. The Reeve was judge, but every free villager could speak before verdict. First to stand was Holgar, a farmer who'd quarreled with the Finns over boundaries last summer. I demand severe punishment, he said loudly. Law is law. If we forgive them now, who'll respect the law next? We can't risk everyone's safety for one sick man. His words drew some agreement. You saw Yorn among them, nodding vigorously. You knew his thinking. In survival, sentimentality was fatal. Then another woman, the village midwife, stood. But old Finn is dying, she said sadly. His sons were just terrified. If we punish them, who cares for the poor old man? Do we watch him die? The crowd whispered again, now with sympathy and hesitation. At that moment, your mother Ilsa stepped forward. She rarely spoke in public, all quieted to hear her. The law protects us, she said in her clear, calm voice. But sometimes overly harsh law destroys what it should protect, our humanity. The Finn brothers erred. They deserve punishment. But their motive was love for their father, twisted by fear. Punish the act, but don't destroy the family. She turned to Oswald. Reeve, I ask that in enforcing the law, you leave a shred of mercy. For one day, each of us may need others' mercy. Her speech subtly shifted the mood. People began to think, not just react from fear and anger. Finally, your father Gunnar spoke. He didn't orate like others, but used a craftsman's practical tone. Punishment's purpose isn't revenge, but to correct error and strengthen the community, he said. Exile them, we lose 2 workers. Confiscate their wood, we gain a family needing aid. Both weaken the village. He paused, gazing at everyone. I believe their punishment should tie to their crime and our village's greatest current hardship. He turned to the Finn brothers. You acted selfishly without community interest, so your punishment, double service to the community. From tomorrow, both join the bridge repair crew daily, sunrise to sunset. Have your food rations. The saved portion goes to those most in need. He turned to the villagers. As for their father, he's ill. We can't abandon him. I suggest from today, each household donates 1 dry log daily, collected by Old Edda, solely for Old Finn. This helps the sick and ensures no more green wood burning at Finn's. Finally, he looked at Oswald. This is my proposal. 1 upholding law, preserving manpower, solving practical problems. The oak fell silent. All were convinced by Gunnar's wisdom. It was a perfect solution. Strict yet merciful, lawful yet pragmatically wise. It turned a potential village-dividing crisis into an opportunity to strengthen community bonds. Oswald stroked his grizzled beard, pondering long. Finally, he nodded heavily. Gunnar Ulfsson's proposal is wise, he declared. I, as Oak Haven's reeve, declare this the final verdict. Ivar and Sig, do you accept? The brothers raised heads, eyes full of tears and incredulous relief. They knelt not in fear but gratitude. We accept, Reeve, Ivar choked. We thank everyone for mercy. The assembly ended. People dispersed silently, but the atmosphere differed from arrival. A fragile but real sense of unity returned to this winter-besieged village. That night, you and Jorn were sent by your father to deliver the first donated firewood to Finns. You both carried a small bundle of dry logs from various households, walking on the snow. Father is clever, Jorn whispered, the first time you'd heard him express genuine admiration for him. He's just fair, you replied. When you handed the wood to Ivar, he wouldn't meet your eyes. He just took it, murmuring thanks, almost inaudibly. You saw their hearth burning with warm, clean flames. In the corner, old Finn's breathing seemed steadier. On the way home, you looked up, seeing a few snowflakes begin falling from the lead-gray sky. At first one or two, then more, denser. A new blizzard was coming. You quickened your pace. You knew the smoke judgment was over, but the mill's longing still tormented every heart. The bridge repair, with the Finn brothers joining, might speed up, but remained full of unknowns. You suddenly realized that in Oak Haven, survival was like walking a bridge forever under repair. You must tread carefully, follow rules, support each other, to cross from this end to the distant, hopeful other. And winter, like the Blackwater River, forever roared below, waiting for any tiny mistake. That snow began gently, like the sigh of a sentimental poet, soft, scattered, with a hesitant elegance. When you and Jorn returned from Finn's house, the snowflakes merely adorned your hair and shoulders like festive decorations. But once you closed the door, shutting out the cold outside, that gentleness quickly turned into a wild, indomitable will. Overnight, the world changed. You woke not to morning light, but to a deep, unsettling silence. The hut was unusually dim, as if the sun had decided not to rise. You went to the small opening serving as a window, covered with translucent sheepskin, and found it completely blanketed in white. The wind had changed too. No longer the ordinary whistle through the woods, but a low, constant roar, as if a massive, invisible beast prowled and panted right against your roof and walls. Your father Gunnar was already awake, standing at the door trying to push open the heavy wooden panel. He used all his strength, but the door moved less than a finger's width. A blast of icy, powdery snow surged through the gap, carrying a chill as pure as death. The snow has buried us, he said briefly, his tone free of panic, only the gravity of facing an old adversary. Buried. Jorn leaped from his straw bed, face full of disbelief. How is that possible? It was just one night. This isn't ordinary snow. Your mother Ilsa's voice came from the hearth, where she was adding new wood to the fire. It's the White Reaper. My grandmother told me about it. It comes every 30 years or so. The White Reaper. The word made the air in the hut feel even colder. It was no longer just snow, but an enemy with will and a name. The next 2 hours were spent battling that door. Your father brought his largest wooden mallet, while you and Yorn braced your shoulders and backs against it desperately. Each blow felt like shattering your own bones. The snow outside was packed as solid as stone, stubbornly resistant. Finally, amid Gunnar's roar, the door was bashed open enough for someone to squeeze through sideways. When you were the first to slip out, the sight before you took your breath away. There was no village anymore. Everything familiar, the neighbors' huts, the bare oak, the path to the river, had vanished. In its place was an endless, undulating sea of white. The snow had piled so high that most roofs were mere vague outlines, like the masts of sunken ships. Only higher-ground homes like Reeve Oswald's and Blacksmith Thorin's were clearly discernible. The air was filled with wind-whipped snow dust, visibility so low you couldn't see 10 paces ahead. The wind lashed your face like a whip, each breath like swallowing icy blades. "Get back inside," your father shouted from behind. "Bring the shovels." That day, the men of Oak Haven didn't work on the bridge but fought a more primal, desperate battle, digging a path back to the world. Starting from your own door, you shoveled bit by bit, carving a trench just wide enough for one person. It was exhausting work. The snow was deep and heavy, and the wind kept blowing fresh drifts into the grooves you'd just cleared. You felt less like shoveling snow and more like digging holes in water. By noon, you finally connected your trench to the nearest neighbor, old Edda's house. When you saw Edda's wrinkled face poke out from her door, you felt an absurd, survivor-like joy. Just seeing another person's face was enough to prove you hadn't been utterly forgotten by the world. But the blizzard showed no sign of stopping. It roared on relentlessly, as if intent on flattening the entire world in white. The bridge repair was postponed indefinitely. Now everyone's goal shrank to the basics: survive. Days became long and monotonous. Time lost meaning, blurring into vague alternations of day and night. Your life reduced to a few essential actions: keeping the flame alive, rationing food, reinforcing the roof, and waiting. This forced idleness was torture for young men like you and Yorn. You were used to burning excess energy and anxiety through heavy labor. Now, trapped in this cramped space, you paced like caged wolves, restless and irritable. "I'm going mad," Yorn said on the third day, pacing back and forth, thumping the floor. "We have to do something. We can't just sit here waiting to die." "Then what do you want to do?" your father asked without looking up. He was sitting on a low stool, carefully oiling the handles of his prized tools with a fine hemp cord. "Go out and wrestle the storm? We could reinforce the roof. Or check on the others," Yorn said. "I've already checked the roof. It'll hold for now. As for the others, if their chimneys are still smoking, they're alive." Gunnar pointed to the smoke vent in the roof. In the blizzard, smoke became the fragile signal sustaining the village. Every morning, your father risked being swallowed by the storm to climb the roof and clear snow around the chimney, ensuring the lifeline wasn't severed. "But," Yorn tried to argue, "sit down." Your father's voice was quiet but carried unquestionable authority. "If you think your strength has nowhere to go, sharpen all these axes. Remember, slow grind, plenty of water. If you ruin any blade, you'll be gnawing wood with your teeth this spring." Yorn sat sulkily, picking up a whetstone and a hand axe, grinding with venting fury. You watched your father. In such extremes, he seemed even calmer than usual. He had a knack for breaking down massive, uncontrollable crises into small, manageable tasks. His world held no panic, only tools needing oil, nets needing weaving, firewood and food needing calculation. You realized this was his wisdom, a knowledge of order and patience. He wasn't waiting passively but actively combating chaos in a craftsman's way. Alan, he suddenly called your name. Come here. You went to him. He picked up a small piece of birch wood and handed you a knife. Sit. I'll teach you to make something, he said. For the next few hours, he taught you how to craft a knot tester with the simplest tools. It was a compact wooden device with various grooves and holes to test knot tightness under stress. To you, it seemed a trivial gadget, but in your father's telling, it became a sacred object. My master, an old man from the northern fjords, made me craft this as my first thing, Gunnar said, deftly carving the wood, his tone rare with reminiscence. He said a craftsman's life hangs on every knot he ties. A loose knot could drop a priceless beam and kill your mate. A wrong knot could wash away a bridge in the first spring flood. He had you try a double hitch, then secure it on the tester and pull hard. The knot slipped. You were too hasty, he said. You mimicked the motion without understanding the knot's heart. Watch. He retied it, showing how each loop constrained and supported the others. This knot is like a family. Each strand has its place and duty. Misplace any and the whole structure fails. Building is the same. Every piece of wood, every nail, has its heart. You must understand it, respect it, to make it work for you. This was the first time you'd heard your father speak like this. He usually just gave orders, never explanations. In this blizzard-isolated hut, he opened his world to you for the first time. You began to see he built not just bridges and houses, but order, a human wisdom and handiwork against nature's ruthless chaos. This was inheritance. No books, no writing, just a father's hands and voice etching ancient survival wisdom into your mind bit by bit. Your mother Ilsa's inheritance was quieter, yet more profound. On the 5th day after the blizzard began, food reserves started running low. Flour was long gone, salted meat down to the last strips. What remained? A few sacks of barley, some dried beans, a small barrel of pungent salted minnows. Ilsa's daily work was turning these limited resources into sustenance for 5. It was almost magic. She could make a pot of bland but filling hot soup from a handful of barley, a few dried beans, and 2 minnows. She calculated daily firewood precisely, when to use high flame, low, or just embers for warmth. One day, you saw her pull a small clay jar tightly wrapped in oilcloth from under the bed. She opened it, releasing an odd aroma of earth and plant roots. Inside was a full jar of ground, dark brown powder. "What's this?" you asked curiously. "Acorn flour," she replied. "Last autumn, when I had you gather acorns, you complained. Now it could save our lives." She mixed a spoonful into the barley soup. The soup thickened immediately, taking on a peculiar, slightly bitter nutty flavor. Drinking it, you felt a long-missed solid warmth in your stomach. "How did you know about this?" you asked. "My mother taught me," she said. "She said the forest has no waste. Every leaf, every fruit has its use. The key is having the eyes to see them and the knowledge to use them." She began teaching you and Lena to identify her stored dried herbs. Not Edda's medicinal ones, but plants to add flavor and nutrition to food. A pinch of dried nettle leaves made soup more nourishing. A few dried wild garlic leaves toned down the fishy smell of salted minnows. A bit of ground juniper berries gave water a hint of warmth. These bits of knowledge, trivial and ordinary, were as solid and reliable as the stones building a house. Ilsa's inheritance was a wisdom of endurance and creation. She taught how to make something from nothing, sustaining life longest with least. However, the blizzard's tests weren't just food and boredom. On the 7th day, a new crisis arrived. The neighboring hut of Einar, a solitary old hunter, had its roof partially collapse under the snow's weight. It was the smoke. Smoke saved him again. That morning, you noticed Einar's chimney no longer smoked. Your father immediately sensed trouble. With you all, he braved winds that could knock a man down, digging a trench to Einar's. You found half his roof caved in, snow and thatch blocking the hearth, trapping him inside. When you rescued him, he was half frozen, one leg injured by a fallen beam. No choice, you brought him home. Your already cramped hut gained another patient to care for. Einar's arrival upset your family's fragile balance. He consumed extra food and firewood, his moans and wounds stench making the air more oppressive. Jorn's irritability peaked. Why bother with him? He pulled you aside one evening, whispering complaints. Our own food isn't enough. He's an old loner. He wouldn't last long anyway. Shut up, you interrupted angrily. If it were you lying there, you'd want saving too. But we're different. We're young, we can work. He's just a drag. Your argument alerted your father. He came over, not angry, just looking calmly at Jorn. Jorn, he said, why do you think we live in a village? Why not scatter? Live in the forest for more land and game. Jorn was stunned, unsure how to answer. Because one person can't fight winter alone, Gunnar answered for him. A single strength is limited. Today, Einar's roof collapsed. We save him. Tomorrow, if ours does, Thorin and Oswald will save us. That's the meaning of village. We share food, warmth, and misfortunes. We weave all our strengths into a net to catch any who fall. If you don't get that, you're not fit to be my son. Your father's words struck like a heavy hammer on Jorn's heart. And yours. You understood inheritance's meaning again. Not just skills and knowledge, but values. A survival philosophy of us over I. Einar's leg was badly hurt, inflamed, oozing pus. He ran high fever all night, delirious. Your mother used all her knowledge. Boiled moss to clean the wound, willow bark tea to drink, but no improvement. He needs Edda, Ilsa said worriedly. Only Edda knows how to fight this rotting sickness. But in such a blizzard, fetching Edda was nearly impossible. Though trenches connected, walking those narrow, wind-refillable grooves was deadly. I'll go. You stepped up. Everyone looked at you. Your father's eyes held worry, but more approval. Wear your thickest hide coat, he said. Take rope. Tuck the axe in your belt. If the trench is blocked, hack with the axe. Be back before dark. You stepped out into the white, roaring world. In the trench, the wind was somewhat lessened, but still blinded you. You advanced unevenly, feeling like walking a tunnel to the underworld. Several spots were blocked by new snow. You dug like a dog with axe in hands. When you finally reached Edda's and pushed open her door, you were nearly collapsed. Old Edda was by her hearth, intently poking a pile of baking, blackened fungi with a stick. Seeing you, she wasn't surprised, as if expecting you. It's Einar's leg, right? She asked. You nodded, gasping. I knew. I heard the bone spirits crying last night, she said. You didn't know what bone spirits were, but didn't ask. You knew her knowledge came from a world you didn't understand. She didn't come with you. She said she couldn't walk that far in this weather. She handed you a small leather-wrapped bundle. This is gray mushroom powder, she instructed. Back home, mix with boiling water into a paste. Apply to the wound. Change daily. And this, she gave a handful of dried, claw-like plant roots. Have him chew. Remember, chew only, don't swallow. The juice reduces fever, but the root is poisonous. You took the items, feeling their weight like 1,000 pounds. This was Etta's knowledge, her life's essence, now entrusted to you. Child, she called as you left, you're a good boy. You have your father's resilience and your mother's kindness. Remember, knowledge comes in two kinds. One for building things, that's your father's. The other for mending, like Einar's leg or bonds between people. Both are equally important. You returned home arduously with her charge. Handing the gray mushroom powder to your mother felt like completing a sacred mission. You applied the poultice as Etta directed. A miracle. The next day his fever broke. The wound remained gruesome but stopped oozing yellowish-green pus, instead seeping clear, blood-tinged fluid. He's improving, your mother said joyfully. The blizzard stopped on the 11th day. As abruptly as it came, the wind ceased, the snow halted. The world fell into an absolute, awe-inspiring silence. The next day the sun rose, turning all of Oak Haven into a sparkling dream world of diamonds and crystals. But no one had the heart to admire the beauty. As villagers emerged from their snow-buried burrows, reconnecting trenches, every face showed the same: exhaustion, hunger, and a new, deeper despair. The blizzard had isolated them but also depleted their last reserves. Now nearly every household teetered on starvation. The mill on the river's far bank was no longer mere longing. It was the only hope, the only lifeline. You stood at your door, gazing at this utterly reshaped world. Snow half a man's height, some drifts forming walls several men tall. Roads, fields, river boundaries, all gone. Your father Gunnar, blacksmith Thorin, Reeve Oswald, and others gathered, their eyes on the same direction, the snow-covered, ruined bridge. We have no time left. Oswald's voice was hoarse and heavy. We must clear a path to the mill in 3 days, or we'll start eating roots and bark. You gripped your axe handle tightly. You felt that though the blizzard had stopped, the real battle was just beginning. Everything you'd learned in this white silence, not knowledge, acorn flower uses, village meaning, wisdom of mending and building, would face the harshest test in this new fight. The ancestors' echoes still rang in your ears. Now it was your turn to create your generation's echo with your own hands. The sun returned, but it had lost its warmth. It hung like a forgotten silver coin in the pale sky, casting a cold, merciless light that only made the vast snowfield more glaring, making the chill in the hungry villagers' hearts feel all the more real. The blizzard left behind a thoroughly purified world, terribly silent. But beneath this silence, a new, more terrifying sound began to echo in every hut of Oak Haven: the rumble of hunger. At first, it was just intermittent, embarrassing gut noises, but soon it became a constant, gnawing pain in the innards. The village council was held right by the broken bridge, its throat choked by ice, snow, and debris. No long speeches, no elaborate rituals. Reeve Oswald, once dignified and respectable during harvest seasons, now looked no different from any starving villager under his rule. His cheeks were sunken, lips cracked, his once authoritative fur cloak now dull and lifeless. You all know the situation, his voice broken by the cold wind. Every household stored food will last at most 5 days, and that's with rations cut to bare survival. 5 days, the number dropped like a chunk of ice into everyone's stomach. We must fix the bridge, blacksmith Thorin rumbled. His bulk was still large, but his muscles had lost their former power, like deflated sacks. The mill has the last threshed rye from autumn. That's our only way to live. All eyes turned to your father. In matters of building, Gunnar was Oak Haven's absolute authority. Your father looked at no one, his eyes scanning the corpse of the broken bridge inch by inch, like an eagle. The ice had frozen the snapped timbers and banks into one grotesque, dangerous mass. Several main beams jutted crookedly into the frozen river, covered in thick, wind-packed snow crust. "It's hard," Gunnar finally spoke, voice hoarse. "Harder than I thought. The ice is too thick. We can't drive new pilings. We can only use the remnants to build a temporary crossing on top. It'll take every man who can still move. And we don't have food to fuel such heavy labor. Then give the remaining food to the working men." A voice cut in suddenly. It was Hakon, the elder of the Finn brothers. His eyes gleamed with a beast-like, desperate light. "Women, children, and elders, they can't help now. Let them drink snow water. We need to eat to have strength, to work, to save everyone." His words stirred the stagnant pool like a stone, causing a ripple of unrest. Some equally hungry, desperate men showed agreement in their eyes. But more looked at him as if he were a monster. "Shut your mouth, Hakon," Oswald rebuked angrily. "You're speaking the devil's words. We're folk of Oak Haven, not a wolf pack in the woods." "We're becoming wolves," Reeve, Eric, Hakon's brother, screeched in support. "My son gnawed his own fingers from hunger last night. I don't care about your damned rules. I just want my family to live." You saw your father's brow furrow tightly. What he feared most was happening. Hunger was eroding the order he'd built so painstakingly with wood and knots. The protective net of the village was rotting from within. "Food will be rationed by the Reeve," Gunnar said in an unquestionable tone, his gaze sweeping Hakon and Eric like tempered steel. "All men who can wield an axe, assemble here at sunrise tomorrow. We build the bridge." With that, he turned and walked away, giving no room for debate. The bridge work was less building than a tug-of-war with death. You stood in the icy river wind, swinging heavy tools with hands nearly numb from cold. Hunger made your bodies sluggish and weak. Each axe swing, each rope pull, felt like wringing the last strength from your marrow. Your father became the sole core of this near-breaking machine. With minimal words, he issued precise commands. He taught how to use the ice's buoyancy to shift heavy beams, how to bore anchor holes in frozen soil with heated irons. He wasted nothing. Every scrap of wood from the ruins, every usable old rope, found new purpose in his hands. You became his most capable assistant. The knowledge of knots, levers, and structures learned in the blizzard now came alive. You anticipated his needs, handing tools before he spoke. You reinforced knots just from his glance. For the first time, your father's eyes held something akin to pride. But hunger's shadow loomed always. At noon, Ilsa and other women brought lunch. A small bowl of watery mush from the last barley and unknown roots. The meager food vanished in the stomach, leaving only a stronger, empty burn. The village atmosphere grew more oppressive daily. Once evenings brought cooking smoke and laughter. Now, dead silence. Every household barred doors, as if neighbors were no longer allies but potential thieves of the last bite. On the third day, disaster struck. A young man named Olaf, hauling an ice-encrusted log, slipped from exhaustion. His head hit a sharp ice edge. Blood stained the white surface instantly. You scrambled to pull him up, but he was still. His eyes open, staring blankly at the gray sky. Death came so easily, not from beast or disease but hunger. Olaf's death was the final straw crushing the camel. Repressed panic and despair erupted in the crowd. "No more. This is suicide." Someone hurled down his axe. "The bridge isn't fixed, but we'll starve or exhaust ourselves first." "Right," The reeve must have hidden food. Why make a slave while he hides in warmth? The Finns were right. Food for us. The crowd lost control. Some headed toward the village, aiming unmistakably for Oswald's house. Stop! Your father's roar thundered, halting the chaos. He stood on a high ice mound, gripping his massive long-handled axe like an angry statue. What will you do back there? Rob the reeve? Then what? Rob Thorin's next? Your neighbors? We'll all become tearing dogs, biting until none survive. His voice echoed in the cold wind, each word lashing like a whip. Look at your feet. This bridge. He pointed with the axe handle to the unfinished work. It's not just wood and rope. It's our oath, our promise to each other. We vowed to endure this winter together. Olaf died. I'm grieved. But if we quit now, he died for nothing. All our endurance and sacrifice, wasted. Look at me. He raised the axe, pointing across the river to the mill faintly visible in snow. Our hope is there, our only hope. Now, pick up your tools, return to positions. We either finish this bridge as a true village or die here like cowards. No one moved, but the unrest subsided. Your father's words reignited the honor and belonging smothered by hunger and cold to mere ashes in their hearts. You were first to step forward, picking up the rope. Then Jorn, standing silently beside you. Then Thorin, Oswald's son. One by one, men reclaimed their tools. Work resumed, but all knew time was short. That night, your home's mood was at its heaviest. The last barley had gone into noon soup. Remaining food, a few dried salted fish, half a jar of your mother's prized acorn flour. Tomorrow, take these out and share with everyone, your mother said softly, eyeing the food. No, Jorn objected immediately. It's ours. Why give to them? We work the hardest. Because we're a family? Ilsa looked at him, eyes gentle yet firm. Gunnar heads the village. He cares for all. I'm this home's mistress. I care for my family. And you are part of this home. You watched Jorn, his face full of struggle. These days of hunger and toil had reverted him to a selfish, impulsive youth. Jorn, you spoke, surprised at your own calm. Remember Einar? Father said the village is a net to catch the falling. Now we're all falling. If we don't hold each other, the net breaks. You placed a hand on his shoulder. We endure together. Jorn said nothing, but his clenched fist slowly relaxed. On the 5th day, the day Reeve said food would end, the bridge connected at sunset. It was ugly, crude, even shaky in places. Not one of your father's enduring masterpieces, but a makeshift passage to survival, pieced by despair and will. When the last plank was nailed, no cheers. All collapsed exhausted, lacking strength for words. Who goes to the mill? Oswald asked hoarsely. A deadly question. To the mill meant a long, deep snow path. Return with heavy grain needed the strongest. But now all were at limits. I'll go, you stood. Me too, Jorn followed. Your father looked at you, eyes complex. He wanted to speak, but only nodded. Thorin's son and you, Kale. Gunnar named 2 relatively young, strong men. You 4. Take the sled and all sacks. Leave at dawn. That night you barely slept. Lying on the straw, hearing your heartbeat and stomach's empty twist. You felt an unprecedented, heavy responsibility. You were no longer just Gunnar's son Alan. You were one of Oak Haven's hopes. Before departure, your mother baked the last acorn flour and 2 dried fish, wrapping in cloth, tucking into your chest. Eat on the way, she said simply, but her eyes held volumes. Your father handed you a sharp-bladed hand axe he'd made himself. Remember, he met your eyes, word by word. Protect your companions. Protect the grain. You're my son. This was the first time he'd acknowledged your bond so solemnly. Not just blood, but responsibility and spiritual inheritance. The path to the mill was harder than imagined. Under deep snow hid frozen ditches and sharp rocks. Each step drained immense energy. At noon, you shared the meager food. It was everyone's last energy source. When you finally saw the familiar, snow-covered mill, all nearly wept with joy. The miller's family had survived miraculously on leftover bran and hunting luck. Seeing you, they reacted like kin. No delay, you loaded grain immediately, dipping your hand into the rye-filled sack, feeling the rough, full kernels. You touched not grain, but life itself. The return, burdened with heavy grain, was longer, more dangerous. Dusk fell. Wind rose, whipping snow like white ghosts. Less than a mile from the village, accident struck. Cale, leading, stepped into a snow-covered ice hole. His grain sack plunged with him. You rushed. Cale struggled in icy water. Yorn, without thinking, lay on the ice, reaching. But the ice was slick. He nearly slipped in. "Rope!" you shouted. You recalled your father's double hitch, sturdy like a family. Quickly untying your belt rope, you tied a perfect double hitch loop at the end, tossing to Cale. "Under your arms!" you roared. You and the others pulled desperately from behind. Yorn guided from front. Finally, exhausted, you dragged Cale from death's edge. But his grain sack sank forever. Cale shivered purple, teeth chattering. You knew without quick warmth he'd die. "Drop the grain. Carry him," Yorn yelled. "No," you countered. "We can't drop the grain. It's the village's life." "Then Cale? Let him die here." Yorn's eyes reddened. You looked at shivering Cale, then the sled's priceless sacks. A terrible thought you despised snaked in. Perhaps abandon one to save many. Hakon's voice echoed in your ear. "No." You shook your head fiercely, banishing it. Your father's face, Edda's words, the village net flashed. "We abandon no one, no grain," you forced calm. "Yorn, you and Thorin's son, you're strong. Take turns carrying Cale. I'll pull the sled. You alone." They stared incredulously. The sled held 3 sacks, at least 200 pounds. "I can," you said. You harnessed the tow rope, gripping your father's axe like a talisman. Head down, you leaned all weight into the rope, trudging step by step through snow. Your lungs burned like fire, muscles screamed, vision blackened. Each step tore your soul from body. You thought nothing, mentally chanting father's words. Mortise, knot, beam, balance. These cold building terms became your will's sole pillar. You were building a moving bridge to survival with your body. You didn't know how long you walked. When village firelight flickered faintly, your strength ended. You face-planted in snow, unable to rise. You woke on your home straw bed. Warm firelight on your face, air scented with long mist-baked wheat. Your mother sat beside, wiping your face with warm, damp cloth. Seeing you wake, she smiled wearily but relieved. You struggled up, seeing your father at the door, gazing out, his back tall and silent in firelight. "We succeeded," your voice rasped like sandpaper. "Yes, we succeeded." Your father turned, looking at you. His eyes held unprecedented mix of pride, relief, fear. He approached, placing a rough, calloused hand on your head. That hand which taught axe grip, not tying, would grain reading. Now it rested quietly, conveying power beyond words. "You did well, Alan," he said. "You held that bridge. You understood." He meant not just the ugly wooden one over the river. He meant the invisible bridge of trust, duty, sacrifice called village. In the darkest moment, you didn't abandon. With your body, you upheld that bridge, guarding a vow of humanity. Spring finally came. When melting snow formed streams, first greens sprouted from black soil, Oak Haven lived. Fewer people, each face marked by winter, but eyes held reborn toughness from ashes. You and your father led villagers to dismantle the temporary bridge, building a new, sturdier stone one. You stood by the river, watching your father mortar massive stones seamlessly with lime and sand. Sunlight shone on him on your tools. You knew this was inheritance. Not just how to build a bridge, but how, in every harsh winter, to rebuild that bridge in people's hearts, time and again.